Hey guys, my name is Justin Wise. We are going to talk about this today, beginning to measure social media ROI. And it's one of those topics that it's scary for a lot of people. Asking that question of how do we start to really evaluate and determine if what we're doing with our social is actually working and accomplishing objectives. And oftentimes when I ask people, hey, how are you determining social media ROI? It's almost always like, the answers almost always sound like, well, we look at our likes, or our retweets, or our follower count, or our like count. We see how many pins a post gets, or how many likes a photo gets on Instagram. And the measurements basically stop there. And my suggestion, and really what I believe and have come to see this happen time and time again, is that there's way more to social media ROI than counting likes. That's the umbrella term that I use. But the reality is that's an easy thing for us to look at and measure and determine, is this going up or down? So most of us stop there. But there's really a whole other journey that we can follow our social media content on and really start leveraging it and utilizing it to accomplish organizational goals and objectives. And I do want to say this session is slated to go till noon. We will most likely have to end early. The only time I could get a flight out of here was at 1:20. So, yeah. So I want us to get as much of this content in as possible. We'll probably be able to get through all the slides, which is going to be good. If you have questions, one thing that I do love to do is just pop a hand up during the presentation, and we'll stop and camp out. Because the concepts you'll see here today are basic and they're simple, and that's on purpose. I want them to be so simple that it offends the experts. Right? So someone looking at this would say, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? That's the goal here. Because we make social media into this giant, monster with 8 tentacle arms and razor sharp teeth, and it's not at all. So I want to give you some tools for beginning to measure your social media ROI and showing you that it is in fact you are able to measure it and you're able to accomplish goals with content. Some of you who were in the session yesterday have already seen these slides, but for the rest of you who are new, I do want to kind of just unpack a little bit about who I am and my background. The amazing people you're looking at on the screen there, that is my family. It's my wife, Carrie. We've been married for almost 8 years. My son is suspended upside down. That's Finn. And my daughter, Evie, there is, actually that's when she's about 6 months, and she's much bigger than that now. But that's my fam. That is who I bring to the table here today with me. About a year ago now, just over a year ago, I started my own business. And with a last name like Wise, you are required by law to use that in your business name, especially when you do consulting. So we started the Wise Group about 14 months ago, and the primary, offering of the Wise Group is what you see there on the screen, Think Digital Academy. It's our online social media coaching program. I also wrote a book. It's called The Social Church, and I'll share a little bit about that. I live here in Des Moines. I pointed out on a map because most people simply don't know where Des Moines is at, especially here on the West Coast. I don't know what it is about West Coast folks, but I mean, you're all very intelligent. This has nothing to do with intelligence, but I think it's like, where the border is, the border for, the state, everything that exists east of that is like no man's land. So that's the impression I get anyway. So that's where we live. We're by Chicago and the Twin Cities and Omaha. I used to be a pastor for a long time, just about 7 years. And it's at this point people will often ask, how old are you? Because I look like I'm 12. But I am in fact 33, and I was started interning at Hope, Lutheran Church of Hope there. It's a Lutheran megachurch in Des Moines. Started interning there and then started working there and worked there till I was about 30. 30 years old, and then worked for a bunch of different organizations, and I learned the web and how the web really has the power to translate and share messages and kind of harness and leverage community. And so went to seminary, did all that fun stuff, and then promptly quit working in a church. Because I realized like what people see from pastors on the weekends, that's like the cool part that everybody aspires to, the preaching and the teaching. But that's about 10% of being a pastor, if that. There's a lot that went into that I just was not prepared for. And so started doing other stuff, and that's where I'm here today. So the book I told you about is Social Church Book. You can get it at socialchurchbook.com in case you have not already picked it up. And on launch day, we almost, so on the categories, Amazon categories, you know, there was a book in front of us. That book was by C.S. Lewis, and I wanted to beat C.S. Lewis in the category that day. So I tweeted that out, and then I got pictures like this, which I thought was hilarious. It's actually me punching C.S. Lewis in the face. It is literally me punching C.S. Lewis in the face. But anyway, that was fun, and I didn't beat C.S. Lewis that day, so I was kind of brokenhearted about that. He is. He's kind of ripped. He looks bewildered. I'm laying down the haymaker, man.
I've never seen C.S. Lewis without a shirt on.
Yeah. There's probably a good reason for that. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking to you about today comes from this book, or the ideas at least stem from the book. So what I want to start and really dive in with is this. You know, when we talk about social media ROI or social media results, there's so many different steps that you need to take before you actually start seeing the results that social can provide. So what I found is that when I would study organizations and businesses, and we work with nonprofits and for-profits, and when I looked at the differences between the ones who are really excelling at social media and the ones who are getting frustrated and they weren't seeing movement, they weren't seeing progression, I saw differences. And the differences really boiled down to the ones who saw results were the ones who took it seriously. The ones who spent time and energy and resources diving into social, understanding the platforms, getting to know their audience, and creating content that their audience wants, not what they want to promote. As opposed to the ones who weren't seeing results, those were the folks who ascribed to what I call the hope method, where you create content and hope that it does something. Hope that it works. And social kind of got put on the back burner in these organizations where, oh, we'll get to that someday. In the meantime, just go start a Twitter account and start tweeting stuff, right? That almost always never works unless it went viral by accident. So I'm going to outline for you the steps that you need to get results. So I didn't even explain the slide. So here's what I know about cooking. I don't know much, but I know this. If you want to bake chocolate chip cookies, you can't go to the store, buy a bag of flour, put it on the countertop, and expect to see results. Your chocolate chip cookies. It doesn't work like that. You need other ingredients. You need sugar, chocolate chips, butter, right? Butter, other stuff, salt, to make the cookies. There's steps, there's ingredients that you need. And social media ROI is exactly the same way. So if you aren't seeing the results, it's likely because you're missing an ingredient or two or three or four or five. And so I want to help you identify what those ingredients are so you can start incorporating them into your rhythm. So we developed this, and the slide kind of got cut off there. I always like to put that disclaimer up at the top. Don't worry, we'll go over this step by step. Because when you first look at this, it's kind of a little overwhelming. But I'm a visual learner. That's the best way that I learn, and it's the best way that I can teach and communicate. So we put together this. Think of this as like a recipe for social media results. Now, a recipe doesn't mean foolproof. If you're baking cookies, you can still be a terrible baker, right? And put the wrong amounts in, or not, have the oven set at the right temperature. But by and large, what you're looking at here is a blueprint, a pattern, a system for creating social media results. And we've broken it down into a few different categories, and I'm going to go through those here. You see on the left, return on sharing. On the right, return on engagement. The bottom, that incorporates the whole picture, return on investment, your ROI. It's return on sharing plus return on engagement. And in the middle, you're going to see that circle, it's responsiveness. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. And at the top, when you have all these elements in place, it helps you create more audience-driven content, which simply put is content that your audience cares about, not what you care about. And oftentimes those can be very different. So let's focus on the left side of the spectrum first. Now, just right out the gate, this is going to be the area that most of us are familiar with and comfortable with, and we understand. We have a mind frame, or mind understanding for it. And this side, return on sharing, simply put, it supports the intended action that you want your community to take. So when we talk about social media, we really have two sides of the same coin. We build an audience. We have to have a strategy for building an audience. We have to have a strategy for influencing that audience to take action. So we were talking yesterday in the intensive. We had an intensive yesterday for Think Digital Academy, and there was a gentleman, I don't think he's here, there's a gentleman in the room who had said, hey, I have these 10,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, but I can't get them to do anything. And I hear that quite a bit, where someone will build an audience, but they can't get people to take action. Or the opposite is true, where you do have people who are taking action, but you're having difficulties building up the audience. And social media strategy it works best when both sides of the coin are accounted for. So return on sharing, the color in here or the lighting in here is probably washing that out a bit, but
You should be able to turn off that front row.
oh, great. Do you know where?
Or on your control over there.
Okay.
Some switches.
Yeah, it might help you guys see a little bit better. Dim. There we go. Okay. So return on sharing, you're going to see three circles there. Think of those as ingredients. Digital action, interaction, result. Digital action, interaction, result. Simply put, digital action is the content that you create. The tweets, the status updates, the videos, the pictures, these sorts of things. These are the actual content items. We send it out into the world. We send the content pieces out into the world. There's an interaction there with our audience and that content piece. And then we see a result of some sort. And on this side of the spectrum, you're going to have, got ahead of myself a little bit. So we talked about that, interaction, consumption of the digital action, and then the result. And these are going to be short-term results. This is the most important thing to remember on the return on sharing side of things, is that the results are always, or almost always, short-term. Meaning, if you're thinking about like a river, these are the things that are floating in the river as it goes downstream. So they're here today, gone tomorrow. Things like likes, plus ones, page views, email list growth. These are things that don't really take a whole lot of relational equity from your audience. It's super easy to like a post on Facebook. It's super easy to favorite a tweet. It's even now super easy to retweet. It's super easy to view a blog post. These are short-term results, but this necessarily starts the relationship with social media ROI. So again, we're talking about short-term things. The indicators here are follower count goes up, your likes, readers, views, connections. They read an ebook maybe that you have to offer for free. And unfortunately, what I have found is that, I don't know what it is, I haven't done a study on this, but 80 to 90% of people, organizations, brands, businesses, they stop here. And that's what I was kind of talking about earlier, where this side is important, but it's missing the whole, juicy part of social media ROI, as we'll see here in a little bit. So it's a necessary part to start the journey, but it cannot end here. But there's a reason why most of us stop. And the left side of this, return on sharing, is important. This is a picture of a pizza oven, if you couldn't tell, from a restaurant right near our house that we love going to. And think of content, the content you're creating. It's necessary. It's like the firewood in this picture, right? So you couldn't bake that pizza without the firewood to stoke the fires. and think of content that way. You have to have content if you're going to play the game, if you're going to create results, if you're going to create a nice, warm, bubbly pizza. I don't know why my analogies all have to deal with food. But anyway, you have to have the content piece going. And again, this is where a lot of organizations fall into difficulty because there's no plan, there's no strategy, there's no thought process for governing these different social networks or keeping content consistent on these networks. Where somebody somewhere within the organization got the idea, hey, I'm going to start a Twitter account. And they go, they're super excited about it for like a week. And then you can watch it. I mean, the posts are, consistent, and then it just drops off. And you have to have that fuel going. You have to have consistency if you're going to build an audience and influence their action. So the right side is where the fun happens. And it's the return on engagement side. And this side converts the intended action that you want your community to take. But so few of us actually make that jump. We can't make that leap because we're missing one crucial ingredient. I'll get to that in a second here, but I want to explain this side a little bit. Return on engagement. The first ingredient there, the first circle, is word of mouth. That's where your community starts to do your job for you. They start to do marketing on your behalf, right? They start to tell other people about the cool things that you're doing because there's a relational buy-in there. You've developed a relationship with them, and so now they've become little marketers for you. Next is recommendation. Your community's community starts to do your job for you. This is where things get exponential, okay? Where after the word of mouth happens, that's when your community starts to market for you, and then your community's community starts to market for you. So it goes another level up. More relationships are extended and built. And they start to do the job for you. Oh, doggone it, I did this yesterday. Did it again. Okay, so again, your community, it's one level up, it's more relationships, more relational power online. And then this leads to the crown jewel of kind of this. This is taking the baking sheet out of the oven, right? Where you see the more results here. And these are the long-term results that we aspire to with social media. And really, when you think about it, social media, to completely demystify it, it is simply relating to people online. That's all it is. There's no magic to it. There's no secret to it. There's no if you post at this specific time during the day, then, everybody's going to love you and buy your product or come to your service or whatever. And I didn't ask this in the beginning. How many of us here are based in a church, working in a church? Okay, a few. Nonprofits? School? Okay, school, university? Okay, cool. But social can produce long-term results for us because again, at this base level, it's simply relating to people. And again, there's no magic spell. This is the thing that drives me nuts about social is that people get this mistaken idea that there's some magic formula that these timing studies come out. They just drive me crazy because it's oh, here's the perfect time of day to tweet. And what I've come to realize is all those studies, they all say the same thing. Send content when the people in your audience are awake. Don't send it when they're asleep. It's that simple. I mean, it really is. Do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say timing studies? They are important, they're helpful, but a lot of it's just common sense. And it's honestly like a guessing game. So for me to say, yeah, I know when, what's your name?
Korean.
Oh gosh, say it again.
Korean.
Korean
Korean, but with a U, so Korean.
Korea.
Korean.
Korean.
But with a U, not with the O, so Korean.
So your audience, I would totally be guessing if I said, I'm going to know the perfect time for your audience. It's a total guesswork. It's a total guessing game. You have to know your audience intimately and understand when the best time is for them to get your content. Anyway, these are the things we're going for: trust, loyalty, affinity, commitment. And this system can produce it. Now, You may be noticing something here that something's missing. There's return on sharing, return on engagement, but remember what we saw earlier, there's something in the middle, and this is the most important piece of the puzzle right here, and that's responsiveness. Responsiveness is the only way to bridge this gap between return on sharing and return on engagement, between short-term results and long-term results. The only way. And this responsiveness is the place that takes the most time, it takes the most energy, it takes resources, which is why most organizations don't do it. And when I say responsiveness, what I really mean is you are replying to people on Twitter. You are commenting back when they say something on an Instagram picture. You're answering their Facebook messages. You're responding back to their comments on your Facebook page. You are actively searching hashtags for people who may be helped, whom you might be able to help. Not market to, but help. An example, and I shared this yesterday, I have some friends who work at Focus on the Family, and they've learned, they're really going through a very interesting phase in their history right now, where they're realizing like they have to change some things that have always worked for them. They're just not working anymore. And so one of the things that they've done is invested heavily in what they call the Digital Engagement Center. And long story short, they have a team that is, around the clock searching hashtags, searching Facebook groups, messaging boards, Yahoo Answers, and they've identified keywords and questions that they are really experts on. And so they're searching and looking and watching, and when they find a term or a conversation that they can intelligently insert themselves into, they do that. They don't, the one example I saw was a young woman asked on Yahoo Answers, should I get an abortion? I mean, it's amazing what they're showing me, that people will just ask total strangers. And so their thought was, if they're going to ask total strangers, we need to be in this conversation. Because we know what happens, when young women make that decision to have an abortion. And so they go, and as they've had a ton of training around this area, as you can imagine, with a topic that sensitive. They're able to basically just help and say, have you considered this? If you want some other options, you should consider this. There's no and here's our, when I was a server, the thing that always drove me crazy was when the Christians came in to eat after church on Sunday. Do you know why? They don't tip. What do they leave instead? Tracts. Yes. And it wasn't like the digital version of a tract, like, hey, you are thinking of an abortion? Well, you're a sinner. And here's why you shouldn't have an abortion, because God will hate you, this sort of thing. They just genuinely wanted to help people. And I think our organizations could stand to do a lot more of that. So in other words, Focus is a responsive brand. They're seeing results. Their image is changing before their eyes. Another example I'll share with you, and I've shared this story in a few different arenas, but it bears repeating, and it kind of emphasizes the point. Delta Airlines, when I used to fly, I fly a lot more now than I used to, but whenever I would fly, I would use like a kayak.com or a cheap airfare site and go with the cheapest option. Well, on one particular day, I was flying Delta because they had the cheapest ticket, and I had left my iPad in the seat pocket in front of me, and got off the plane and realized, left my iPad. It's my iPad, man. And so I kind of freaked out, and I knew that I didn't want to call a customer care line because it takes forever, and I have to say operator over and over and over again, or hit 0 like 20 times to get a real human being. So I did what I naturally do, and I tweeted them. I tweeted Delta. I said, hey, this is my flight I'm on. I left my iPad in the front pocket. Can you help me out? And I certainly didn't expect a response, but it was just like, well, I have to at least try. And to my surprise, within, I think it was 5 or 10 minutes, I had a response from them saying, okay, where are you at? I told them the airport I was at. Go here, go to this gate, tell this agent. We filled out a request for you online, and went to the agent, and they said, yeah, we found it. You got to get on your next plane, get on the next plane. We'll FedEx it to your house tomorrow. And I was totally astounded by the level of service that I had received through Twitter, and the attentiveness and the responsiveness that they chose to have for me in that moment. And since that day, that was 3 years ago, I've flown another airline, I think 4 or 5 times. I've almost flown exclusively on Delta when I had even a remote chance of a choice. I've flown Delta. And I mean, this is thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles. And so for Delta, and I can only imagine that I'm one instance of many where they've said the cost that it takes to have someone 24/7, a whole team, they have like 12, 13, 14 people on their team answering these tweets. That cost to them is significantly worth way more because of what they receive in return. Loyal customers. There's that loyalty I was talking about. Loyalty, advocacy, affinity. And I've told that story probably a dozen times now. And so that word of mouth, that recommendation, I know that has been worth Delta simply from my own perspective, and the money that I have spent on that on their airline just because of that one instance. That one instance totally paid off for them. So what you're looking at here, this picture, it's kind of a visual illustration of responsiveness. So this, my son has this is not my son, this is a cartoon, but he has a track that looks very similar to this at home. And if you've never seen one of these work, the little cars go around the track, and when they hit that, that center kind of hub area, there's 2 little wheels in there that are spinning super fast, and they spit the car around the track again. And so it just kind of goes in circles over and over and over. He loves it. But responsiveness for a brand is like that center hub, where if you aren't responsive, you're going to have a real tough time getting people around the track online. You're going to have a tough time seeing the results that you want. Because a brand or a business or an organization that is unresponsive, what they are saying, the message that they're sending, the underlying message is, we don't care about you. We don't care about you. We want to share, but we don't want you to share with us. We want you to buy our product, to attend our service, to donate to our cause, whatever, but we don't care enough about the relationship to have this be a two-way street. This is a tweetable tweet for 800, Alex, but I interviewed a hero of mine, a guy by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, and I've had the privilege of interviewing him a couple times now, and he said this at one point in our interview. I can't remember what he was referring to, but it really spoke to me, and the necessity of responsiveness. Because you and I, we can automate content, we can schedule it on Hootsuite or on Buffer, and I'm certainly not against that at all. But I'm finding more and more that that's actually the less important part of social. The more important part is this, the human spirit, the human element. I was one of our clients, we do some social media management, and as part of those services, we'll be the engagement team for a brand or a business. And I was talking to one of our guys yesterday, and he said, can't you just charge us less and find a program that does engagement? And I was like, no. So I thought of this quote. I mean, certainly from a business perspective, but the reality is you can't replicate one-on-one human interaction with a program. At least not with social. It's not possible. And this is where a lot of folks will say, I'm out. The cost is too great, the cost is too high, and what I believe, the cost is too great to not be responsive. The stakes are way too high now, where the people who are in our organizations, it doesn't matter if you're a business or a church or a school, People are expecting brands to be responsive. And when I say brands, you all know what I mean. Every organization now is a brand. We are all individual brands. I know that sounds crazy, but that is the reality that we're in now. And the people who are in our organizations, they expect responsiveness from brands. And when they don't get it, they move on. And they go find a brand that will be responsive with them. But you can't automate the human spirit. So let me give you some examples here of what not to do. And then we'll look at examples to follow. So this, I blurred out the names here because it's not important. I didn't want to make anyone feel ashamed if somebody sees someone that they recognize. This was a church, and this person was an attendee of the church, and they had posted on the wall, check out these great photos from Chili Skate, which sounds painful, Chili Skate, Ski Skate 14, feel free to tag yourself. They had posted this and tagged the church, so it showed up on the church's Facebook wall. And you can see 6 people liked it, this guy commented on it, and not one of those likes came from the church. And the reason why I'm showing this to you is because this was the case for the church on all the posts from other people who had posted on the actual church's Facebook page. There was zero responsiveness from this church. And again, this sends a message to people that we aren't here, we really don't care. And this kind of is just heartbreaking to see. And it may not seem like a big deal, but it is. I can promise you this, when this gal tagged her church on there, she expected some sort of response from her church, and she didn't get it. And you can see, I feel like every church that I come into contact with, I'll go to their Facebook page, and I'll see example after example after example of this. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect, it just means there needs to be an effort. One like here from the church would have made this gal's day, right? Some more examples here. Another example of a non-responsive church. This member said, our girls were singing Go Tell It on the Mountain today. Thank you, such and such church. It was so precious to hear. Elizabeth even made her own ending. Go Elizabeth. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills, everywhere. Go tell that Jesus is my Lord. Okay. Now, for this mom, this was a near and dear moment for her and her family. And she went to the effort of tagging the church. And you can see 26 people liked this. Again, not one of those likes came from the church. And so the church in this moment, they lost an opportunity to build relationship with this particular woman. They lost a relational bonding opportunity. And the stronger the connection we have with our people, again, this is a church, it could be anything. The stronger connection that we have, the greater the chances are we get those long-term results. Trust, affinity, loyalty, advocacy. So again, the goal here is to be responsive. This was funny to me because this person said, I love my church, and then they tagged the church. But I also love the message at this church, check it out. And they tagged some other, New Spring, down in South Carolina. And what was hilarious, I don't have this on the screen cap, was that her church didn't respond, but New Spring did. Isn't that crazy? So New Spring, the church that she said, hey, not her home church, responded, but her own church didn't take the time to do that. And I know the guys at New Spring, they are, if you want an example, a church, nonprofit or otherwise, they are fantastic with their online presence. Really smart, really sharp, super responsive. So, this may be it actually. No, this is from New Spring. This is a post from New Spring's wall. So look at this. 123 people like it, and they respond to just about everybody, which is awesome. You go to their page and you just see this explosion of community and conversation. So my friend Haley, she's the social media manager at Saddleback. They have made it a point at Saddleback to respond to every comment that they get on their page. And it's one person. It's Haley. That's all it is. And she doesn't work, 100 hours a week. She has a regular life, just like everybody else. But they make a point because they know relationally that the cost of ignoring those is way higher than the cost it takes to invest and be responsive. So here, I just show you these examples to show you how she's responding. So here's a short little amen. But I can promise you this, and Haley has responded as Saddleback to some of my tweets when I tag them, and it makes me feel good. I'm like, hey, Saddleback, they commented back. That's cool. Even though I know in my head who it is. It's Haley saying hello. It means something because that brand, Saddleback, they're a global brand. And they're being responsive. And here's the point here. You may say at this point, well, they're Saddleback. They have all the resources. Listen, it's one gal who is just kicking butt. So I know it can be done on very limited resources. This is another example. It's an Instagram example. This is one of my favorites. This comes from National, I just call it NCC. I call it Batterson's Church, actually. Is it National Community Church in D.C.? Anyway, Mark Batterson's church, they are out of D.C., and this is their Twitter feed. You see this all the time. It's just filled with that replies. Awesome. I love seeing that. So again, to bridge that gap, what's that? It's just at NCC. You could probably tweet them right now. In fact, let's do a little experiment. Tweet at NCC, say, hey, at NCC, we're learning about responsiveness, and at Justin Wise said you're a good example, or something like that, and see what happens. I bet you'll get a response pretty soon. Don't fail me now, NCC, come on. So again, these are good examples to follow when we're talking about responsiveness. And I could have showed you businesses that do the exact same thing, like Delta. If you go to Delta Assist, almost their entire feed is at replies. They're just helping people. Starbucks, the other day, tweeted back to me because I had a really bad experience in one of their stores, and I said, hey, this bummed me out. They're like, well, let's get you taken care of. And they sent I don't remember what it was, like a $10 gift card or something. But still, this is Starbucks. Sprint tweeted me back the other day. Delta. And again, you may be thinking, well, these are giant global brands, but I can assure you that this is happening on a big business level and a small business level. It's happening all over the place. When I was in a conference in Hawaii a couple months ago, and the restaurant that I ate at, they had this amazing ahi tartar salad that I ate. It was unbelievable. So I Instagrammed a picture of it and hashtagged, I think they had a hashtag in their store. So I used their hashtag, and within like 30 minutes, they had responded to it, which I thought was awesome. And this is a teeny tiny little cafe. So again, the way we get a full picture of ROI is with return on sharing added to return on engagement with responsiveness bridging that gap. Those are the full picture of results. Those are all the ingredients. That's how you get that yummy cookie there. Now, the cool part about this is when you have this going, when the system is in place and it's moving, you can see at the top there, the red arrow, audience-driven content. So when all these elements are in place, those results are going to tell you what type of content your audience resonates with. So the system really has a wonderful byproduct that you get to know what they care about more, right? Because those results are going to give you clues, both short-term and long-term results are going to give you clues into what what resonates with your audience. So when we're working with organizations, we look at their likes, for instance, and that gives us a pretty good picture. If one post gets 200 likes and another post gets 20 likes, well, that tells us something about the audience. Oh, and this is cool too, because that when you create audience-driven content, you get an idea. Does your audience like, Chips Ahoy, or do they like, Chewy Toll House cookies? Do they like almonds or raisins in their cookies or not? And really, who likes raisins? But some people do, I guess. But it tells you what type of cookie your audience likes. Yeah.
What was the information after word of mouth before more results on your grid on that?
Recommendation. Yeah, and I think you had come in after I explained this.
Yes, sir.
But word of mouth is your community starts marketing for you. Recommendation is your community's community starts marketing for you. So it goes that next level. So anyhow, here's what I've come to find out. If you treat people like human beings online, you will see results. That's really what it comes to. That whole chart, this is what it boils down to. And this is like the code that people want to crack. This is it right here. This is the secret. If you don't know how to relate to people in a meaningful way, then social media is going to make things 10 times worse. And what social does is it provides us an arena to have real-time interactions on a global scale, and we get to learn a lot quicker how to be decent human beings. Like, I'm kind of embarrassed about this, but I'm going to share it anyway. Those always make the best stories, right? So last night, in fact, after we left the intensive, I had done a podcast episode where I talked about why bad leaders should be afraid of social media. And I talk about the various reasons why. Because I've seen it happen now where social media kind of it sniffs out bad leadership and exploits it. So in this podcast, I talk about it. Well, one of the points on the podcast was leaders over 45 should be delegating social media leadership and nurturing younger leaders in that position. And the point I realized when I was making this episode, I realized that this could be a contention point for a lot of different reasons. But it stemmed from this position of walking into so many different organizations now and seeing leaders who had been an established authority for a long time and were smart and savvy and had wisdom, and younger leaders who needed that wisdom, who needed that leadership. And what has happened in these organizations is that social has been plopped into the lap of folks who don't necessarily speak digital. They're digital natives and digital immigrants, right? And I see this tension happen over and over and over again, where younger leaders are like basically begging for a place at the table. And social is something that not all younger leaders, but a lot of them intuitively get. So anyway, I go on and make this point, blah, 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 blah. Well, some folks did not appreciate my podcast. One of those people was Michael Hyatt. Who knows who Michael Hyatt is? Okay. So Michael and I, now Michael is a friend. I've worked for Michael. He has recommended our product. He did not like that podcast episode at all. So we had a conversation on Twitter last night in a very public atmosphere about why he did not appreciate the podcast episode. And what I learned through that experience was, number one, I did a very poor job in communicating what the post or what the episode was about in the post, so the blog post. It did not convey the entirety of what I was actually talking about in the podcast. So that was lesson number one. Lesson number two was that could have gone south very quickly. Thankfully, Michael, at the end, I felt so much better. I tweeted him, I said, I will literally sleep better tonight because you just said that. And what he said was, I appreciate you, which was helpful for me to hear. I appreciate you, and this stuff is thought-provoking, keep it up. So I was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't hate me. I'm a former people pleaser. So anyhow, why am I telling you all this? Well, in the podcast, I talk about, am I saying that, older leaders should be put out to pasture? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Not even in the least bit. Because younger leaders are so, they need wisdom now more than ever on how to lead. And there's no one else on the planet that can provide that other than people who've been there before and have the experience. But that point got lost in translation, and it doesn't matter because I communicated poorly. But Michael and I were able to have that conversation, and I realized, I got out of it alive, and I was like, okay, I'm all in one piece. Because I've seen the Hyatt effect, that's what I call it, the Hyatt effect. I've seen it work for me when he's tweeted a post that I wrote or something, and I didn't want to see it work against me. And it could have very quickly. But Michael's just a fantastic human being. He's actually a role model of mine. And I realized that, he treated me like a human being. I treated him like a human being because I could have gotten super offended that he was offended. And that would have just gone, that would have been awful. It would have been terrible. Yeah?
Was that bothersome? He did it in public forum.
It wasn't. At first I was like, oh my gosh.
I was wondering what it was. I was
Yeah.
last night, what happened?
No, it wasn't. It didn't bother me and here's why. Because that post was public. So now if he had done something if I had sent him an email and he had, taken issue with something I wrote in an email and tweeted about it, then we would have an issue. But the fact that that was public, anybody could go and read that post and listen to the podcast, I felt like that's kind of my rule. If something is publicly accessible, then you need to be able to talk about that and defend it in some cases in public. If it's private and someone takes it public, then I think there's lines that are being crossed. And I did get a little snippy with another gentleman, but that's all I'm going to say about that. So this is like a central tenet of being a effective at social media, treating other people like human beings. Yeah.
Why NCC just responded in 7 minutes?
They responded.
Yes. Yes.
What'd they say?
So I told him, hey, NCC, Justin Weiss said that you're a great example for responsiveness on social media. Thank you for still investing in people. And they said back, wow, thanks, Justin. That's a high praise coming from you. So
Yeah, they got it down. And that's a church. I mean, I just love that they're so attentive and they pay attention like that. It's huge. They're just being human, right? All right, so we're going to shift into another topic here. And I see we have about 40 minutes left. So this is perfect timing. This slide deck is a little bit shorter. But this kind of illustrates and drives home what the principles of what I was just talking about. Before we do that, any questions, comments, thoughts on the content we just covered? Yeah.
Yes. You spoke about how Saddleback has one person. What are your thoughts about multiple people and representing the brand?
Yeah.
And how to potentially spread that out if you don't, if strategically, figure out how to implement that
Yeah.
within your limited resources?
Yeah, great question. Are you church?
I work here at Biola.
Okay.
I oversee Biola's academics K-12 program.
So what I would say in that instance is, something like this, a situation like the one you're describing will work best when there's a traffic director, right? So there needs to be, typically it boils down to one, maybe two people who have the keys to the kingdom. That's what I call it. They're the ones who are pushing the go button, sending the tweet out, scheduling it, whatever. But what you can have beneath that, and this is if you're talking about one central account. So sometimes in churches they'll have multi-campus, satellite campuses, or in a case of an educational institution there may be different departments. I'm talking about one, the main hub, right? It always works best when there's an owner, someone who can say, I have 10 people who are creating content, but they send it to me and I'm ultimately the last line of defense. So like if you're familiar with like restaurants, the expediter, right? The expediter is the last line of defense before the food goes out to the dining area. And I think an expediter, so to speak, they're not cooking at all. They're just there making sure that everything's up to snuff, that quality is there, and then they send it out. So having that kind of central point, I think is crucial. Because then what you can do is have, you can have 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever, people who are kind of underneath in terms of a structure and sending content to that expediter. And then that person is responsible for setting the tone, setting voice, brand, making sure it's, cohesive. Also setting up brand standards and voice and tone, all that fun stuff.
I think I have that central piece. So practically speaking, help me understand how, because I like this, what you're saying about focus on the family.
Yeah.
Knowing what to respond to and kind of perusing, and also at NCC, that they're that quick to respond. So
Yes.
how do you have this expediter or person that's doing that with the multiple people underneath if you're not allowing more people to be responding? How does that work?
Well, if you're talking about responsiveness, like for our team, I'll give you an example because it's from our team. So one of the things that we do, we have Hootsuite set up, and Hootsuite is cool because it will show you, like if Emily, if she responds, like sometimes we'll do this during webinars when I'm doing a webinar, people will tag me on Twitter, and I'm obviously teaching a webinar, so I can't respond, but she will respond to people who are tweeting me, because oftentimes they'll ask questions. They'll want to know like, hey, where do I get the slides for this webinar? And so she'll be responding from Hootsuite as me, and Hootsuite will show Emily responded to this, you don't have to respond to it. So there's a system set up so we're not double replying to people, but we can see very clearly like, oh, this one's been taken care of. So that's the way to do it. You can train people how to respond as well. Like, hey, this is how we reply to people. If you reply to MailChimp, they have a very specific culture at MailChimp, and you can't tell, oh my goodness, my stomach is going crazy up here, I'm so hungry. Exactly. It's all this food, man. Yeah. But MailChimp, it's cool because they're kind of like the Blue Man Group online, right? So you can't tell, but you know like everything's consistent. They use a lot of exclamation points. They're kind of, they're snarky, but not mean snarky. They're fun. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
When you talk about content, does that include responding, or do you think that it's okay to have, because in the church it's mostly volunteers doing this work, do you think it's okay to have like shifts between your volunteers
Oh, yeah.
respond on Facebook?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or whatever your social media is?
Yeah, especially if you're in a volunteer situation. The only thing that I would say is make sure that there is a standard.
Right.
Like this is what we respond to. This is what we don't respond to. If this happens, here's what you need to do. But having volunteers in that capacity is a fantastic way not only to lessen the burden on the internal team, but also to get people, in this case, involved in being the church and volunteering in an area where they may have a passion, instead of getting like stuck in children's ministry or something.
And I noticed that some of the stuff you were showing us had Hootsuite next to it. It shows that it's been sent from that.
Yeah.
Do you think that makes it any less human, as in like, oh, that kind of seems automated? That's what usually I think of when I see.
What are you talking about? Replies?
Yeah.
Let me make sure I know what you're talking about.
Does it show that when you like reply from Hootsuite, does it show?
Are you talking about here? These?
Oh, those don't show. The Twitter ones, I think.
Talking about Twitter shows what
There you
tool
go.
you use.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh,
Does that make it any less human that it's coming from?
oh, this. Are you talking about this here?
Yeah.
No, that's a Chrome extension.
Yeah, it show up there.
So no one else sees that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because they took away. So there's a couple different layers to this. Twitter and Hootsuite, they used to show you, and they may still do in Hootsuite. I don't know.
Working.
Yeah, they showed you what program people are using to tweet from. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. So I know that's the case on Hootsuite, but this right here, this is no one else sees that but me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you recommend Hootsuite for our
Yeah,
social media?
I love it.
And is that something that volunteers can use as well?
Yep.
Is it on your phone?
You can have it on the phone, your tablet, whatever.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really slick the way they've set up Teams. It takes a little time to get set up, but once it's locked down, it's great. I love it. Yeah.
So on Hootsuite, I started Hootsuite University, okay? And because it's a tremendously powerful tool. In fact,
Yeah.
when you just look at it on the surface, you think you know sort of what it does as an aggregator, but you really have no idea how powerful it really is.
Yeah.
So I started the university. I didn't completely get finished. I was actually a little bit overwhelmed by just because I had a lot of things going on at the same time. How long do you think if a person wanted to dive in, go back through, the university, and how long would it take as far as hours you think if you were trying to really master that? Because I think I've got to use that as a tool more, but I just not dove in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've never taken it, so I wouldn't know.
So you-
No,
Oh, really?
I've never taken it.
There's a lot to it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I find that for me anyway, I just want to get started and break stuff,
Yeah.
see what works and see what doesn't. So I've never actually been through, so I wouldn't know.
Do you think you use its full functionality?
Yeah. Yeah, but I've been using Hootsuite since 2008, so
Okay.
there's a lot of time involved.
Right.
But if you want to learn it quickly, people seem to do seem to enjoy that class. Okay, any more on this specific segment? Otherwise, we're going to keep moving. Okay. So the way this works best typically is by having an intentional community development process. Did we go over this yesterday? I don't think we did. And I want you to be able to know how people come into your online community and then be able to influence the steps that they take through the organization. So we've labeled these categories in different ways here, and I'm going to walk through each one of them. First one is a brand new. Okay, brand new is someone who has not heard about your organization before, or they have kind of a vague understanding, may have seen you once on a billboard, something like that. But they're brand new, essentially, to your organization. And online behaviors typical to a brand new is that they're going to visit your website for the first time. They're going to read an online review. That's one thing I love about coming out to the West Coast is that everybody here uses Yelp. So I'm never at a loss for good food. The community never lies on Yelp. But brand news are going to check out those reviews. And every place now, it seems like, has a Yelp review. They're going to watch a video on your website. I would imagine at Biola, you guys probably have some sort of video on the website somewhere. Is that true? Yeah? Some sites have an interactive game, or they're going to read a guest post that you write somewhere else and tell people about what you're doing. This is the first date. Brand new is the first date. Now, if they like what they see on the first date, you're going to get a second date. That second date is the bought in. They've bought into your purpose, your mission, what we call the big idea. And they're going to take an online survey that you're offering. Hey, tell us more about you. We want to create better content, whatever. Sign up for this free demo, that sort of thing. They're going to follow you on Twitter. They're going to friend you on Facebook. They're going to join your email list. So there's a relational movement here. And the further you go down the spectrum, the more effort it takes, the more relational input it takes to move people down the spectrum from the organization's perspective. So first date, second date, we move from bought in to believer, and this isn't in the religious or conversion sense, but they believe in who you are, they believe in your organization. And believers are going to retweet stuff on Twitter, they're going to favorite your tweets, they're going to like or comment on your Facebook page. They're going to be responsive in some way to you and your content. And they're going to open your emails that you sent. Again, this requires more of someone as they move further on down the spectrum. It takes more time for me to comment on a Facebook post than it does to like a page, for instance. That's an indicator for us. It takes more time to open and read an email than it does to join an email list. And then ultimately we end up with builders. And these are people, in the examples we saw earlier, of the people who were tagging their church on Facebook. Those are examples of builders. So they're creating content based on the organization. They're writing blog posts about the organization. They're tagging you on Facebook, which we saw earlier. They're posting videos on Instagram or on Vine. You see this a lot with, at least in our area, because in Iowa we have no In-N-Out burger, which is a shame. So whenever people come out and they go to In-N-Out burger, they're always Instagramming the pictures of their food, which may sound crazy to you, but exactly. It's such a novelty. It's fun. I'm a huge fan of In-N-Out, but so in that sense, I'm building their brand for them because I'm taking pictures of a burger and sending it out to my audience. So now people are saying, man, next time I go out to California, I got to get an In-N-Out burger, or down to Dallas or Texas or whatever. So this is the spectrum. So we go from first date, second date, engaged to married. Another way, we'll get to that in a second, but this end of the spectrum, the believers and the builders, this is where you start seeing those long-term results. And these guys purchase more if you have stuff to buy, or they donate more. They give more in terms of volume, so they give larger gifts, they give more often, or they purchase more often. So I'm a builder for Delta, right? So I buy tickets from them now all the time. They've incentivized me a couple times to get a day pass in their lounge. So I'm buying more. And MVPs get more people talking as well. So they're going to be what Seth Godin calls your sneezers online. And they get more people talking about you. And again, a different way of thinking about this and a more simple way of thinking of the spectrum is this. Know, like, trust, build. Know, like, trust, build. This is the behaviors, that happen in each category. First, someone gets to know you, then they get to like you, then they get to trust you, and then they build. They become an advocate for you. So that wraps up the community builder part. I do want to leave some time at the end for questions. Here's what I want to do for you, though. If you want the slides from today, because I know that was a lot of bits and pieces there, you can head to that website, justintalks.com, put in your first name and email address, and then I'll send them to you here shortly. So you can download those slides for free if you want them. But I want to leave some time for questions, and then we'll get you guys out of here, because I know lunch is coming up. Yeah.
All right, so I'll admit a little conviction in here as I'm listening to your message, and happy that a year ago, in the digital conference, listening to Michael Hyatt as keynote speaker,
Yeah.
I learned platform. I definitely heard that message strongly. Have your own platform, so we did that. We
Yeah.
have our own blog. However, because of limited resources, the thinking is, how can we be responsive and have interaction about our blog? And so we have not done that yet.
Yeah.
And so I hear the importance
Yeah.
Part of the reason is because the experts within my department are writing these blogs, and they're administrators and instructors with very full lives.
Yeah.
And so, how do we take the next step within those kinds of parameters?
Well, it may be a number of different things. It may be the content it's not resonating with people.
We haven't allowed a platform for response on our blog, is my point, because we're concerned it'd be worse for us to be quiet, not doing anything, so we're just putting out this great content, but
Yeah.
we haven't allowed for it anymore.
Now, we had a great discussion on comments yesterday in the intensive. And so comments to me right now are just like it's almost like a catch-22, right? Because if you have them, then you have to respond to them. If you don't have them, then again, that sends a clear message, like we don't care. But I go back and forth on this. I swear it changes by the day, but what I'm finding more that in terms of engagement and building community, like I would not be surprised if comments were a thing of the past in like 3 to 5 years. I really wouldn't. Comments need to take the next step to be useful to most everyone, besides the trolls. Because what you'll have happen probably if you open up comments is somebody does write something with any sort of theological bent whatsoever that they disagree with, you will hear about it in the comments.
That's our concern, so are you saying that it's not a big mistake that we didn't allow it
I,
out? Because that was
I don't want to say that,
the
you know,
management of it.
yeah, I mean, comments to me are honestly, they're give or take. What is important to me
Okay.
is you're finding the people who are or are not, actually, you're finding the people who may be sharing that content on their social channels. That's what's more interesting to me. Because I think there's the format and the arena of social networks is way more conducive to having a conversation than a commenting platform.
Yeah. Good.
So I would want to know who's sharing this content. If they're not sharing it, why aren't they? And if there's comments, great. If you want to open up the comments, but again, there are these big news platforms now and these big online sites that are just wiping out comments altogether. They're just taking them down
That's good to know.
because they aren't helping anybody. They aren't adding value.
This is helpful, so we should do the next step of looking to see who is sharing.
Yes.
And then having these, probably some volunteers under there, that are then liking and commenting there.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a better use of time.
Okay.
If it were me, that's where I'd focus. Like I know who's sharing the content from my blog. Anytime someone shares a post on Twitter, we know it. And we're not 100% batting average or whatever it is. But it's close where we at least thank them for sharing it. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Sorry to burst your bubble, but the site's now.
Oh, it is.
Oh, okay.
Is it working?
It worked for me, but then it went to like the message after,
Just in time, so.
and then I clicked continue to whatever 14-day trial.
And that didn't work?
And that went to this.
Ah, for crying out loud.
I think it's the www versus not
Yeah.
www.
Well, at least the
www.
mechanism works, I hope.
It worked for him with W's, but not without.
But with Justin Talks, it doesn't work.
I went to just,
I went to
on
Justin's.
here, I went without the W's and it worked, but,
It's good to go to justintanks.com.
yeah, suggest.
Oh, Justin Tanks? I should buy that.
Yeah, you ought to.
Because then if a workshop goes poorly, then I'll put up justintanks.com.
Yeah, you could go choose.
Yes.
which one.
That's right. It's like, okay, this didn't work. Go to Justin Tanks. And it's like a picture of, thumbs down or something like that.
Okay, so if we put up a post on our Facebook page and somebody shares it,
Yeah.
depending on their privacy settings, they may or may not actually be able to say anything about that.
Right.
But if they let me, do I comment on their own profile?
I would
Say thank you for sharing?
I would comment on the post.
On the post itself?
Yes.
Call them out by username and say thanks for sharing.
Well, you can do like, it will show you who has shared it and what they say about it, if anything. And I would go and,
Just as a comment on
yeah, comment or even just like it.
Oh, you can like a share?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just something that lets people know,
Acknowledge that.
Yes.
Thanks.
hey, they paid attention. And that's why I think, so commenting used to be that way where, bloggers, we used to like run Google alerts and get notified anytime someone shared or posted, anytime they posted and had a blog post that included one of our links.
Right.
So bloggers would then go to the post, write in the comments, thank you for sharing. Now, I think that conversation, that functionality has moved to social media because it's a more publicly accessible conversation. Yeah.
Isn't that why Copy Blogger took that off?
Yeah, so they're one of the big sites that took comments down. And I think it was smart for them.
They wanted to be entirely on social.
Yeah. So social is becoming like the new comments section. Social is becoming like SEO experts, man, they're quaking in their boots because they aren't, the little tweaks and the hacks with the keywords and the meta tags and all that, title, whatever. All that stuff, Google's figuring it out. And they're basically saying, we're not going to let you game the system anymore. And so they're favoring social shares in their search rankings, which is huge. And they're not their latest update, but the update before it, they really started showing their hand in terms of how they're weighting social in search results. Yeah, because sharing, this is why this is so important, because it's hard to game relationships. And ultimately that's what social is founded on, is relationships. So if I share an article with my friends on Facebook, that's not something that any site or any business can force me to do unless I enter a contest, but even then I'm entering a contest of my own will. And so that's highly valuable, right? Me sharing with my community. Google knows that, and they're saying, we're going to pay more attention to this than maybe I almost said something totally inappropriate, some joker who knows how to hack, you hear like black hat and white hat SEO, who knows how to hack a web page and optimize it so the little robots from Google can find them quicker. Those days are long gone. So the more organizations can focus on being social organizations, the better off they'll do. All right, so that site is working, hopefully. Would love to connect with you there.